can everybody hear me? Not that I can see you. Okay, so what we're gonna do today is we're gonna go around and I'm gonna show you how to plant different things for the garden, and we're gonna do it as cheaply as possible because I'm just gonna assume that you're a school that has no money because my school didn't. All right. So we're going to show you how to use like leftovers and how to grow from seeds and how to grow from transplants and how to space them and how to plant them and all that stuff. So if you have any questions, ask and somebody will be able to stop me and let me know what you asked. All right. So the first thing we're going to do, and you can buy these, which I bought these, but if you ever have potatoes that get too old and they start doing this, all right, you can plant them. Okay. You can actually cut them so that there's one little bud out of each eye. You can cut them. So this one could be 1, 2, 3, 4 different pieces. All right. But I'm too lazy, so I just throw them in there. All right. So I'm going to get a close up. So basically, potatoes are underground stems. All right. And so the cool thing is, and I'm probably putting these way too close together, but I'm going to assume that everybody's going to make mistakes, and therefore I want to make a mistake, so I want everybody to learn and go, oh, see, she did a mistake and it still worked okay. All right, so basically just put them in there so that some of their leaves are exposed. All right, now what can you hear me with just one? Can you hear me with just one? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to cover the potatoes a little bit, but we're going to let their little buds peek through. All right. And what we're going to do is as they grow, like let's say this was this tall, standing straight up already. As it grows, we're going to cover it so that half of what is exposed is now covered. So as it gets taller, we'll cover it like halfway up each time. So that way, when you do that, all these little places on the sides of the potatoes, all the sides of their leaves will get underground, and that's where they start growing more potatoes. So basically, you're hilling them, all right? So these will start out down here, but I planted mine at home like 2 weeks ago, and the tops are already here, and I just keep adding soil till we get to the top of the container. Now, this is in the middle of a straw bale garden. What's cool about this is it's big enough that I can put several potatoes, throw soil over it, and when it gets to the top of this, I'm just gonna that's as tall as it gets. And then when the potatoes die, I can just take out one of these straw squares and just dig through and find my potatoes. If you want new potatoes before the tops die, you can just kind of scrounge around and find some and just take them off. They'll be soft and, little, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and cover it up so you can't see the tubers anyway. And who knows, critters might come get them, but you know what? That's life. All right. Okay. So that's that. And then whenever you water anything, especially if you just planted it, well, especially with seeds, these aren't, but you want to use either an end, that's called a rose head, or put your thumb over a hose and just let it spread out so you're not just beaming it with the stream of water. And just kind of make sure everything gets wet enough to stay wet for a while. I think it's going to rain now, so we'll go on to the next one. Okay. So I have some tomatoes. And so what we're going to talk about with these is some are determinate and some are indeterminate. All right. This is an heirloom tomato, and anything that's not your hard as a rock red tomato from Walmart is going to have a lot more juiciness, a lot more flavor. So this is an heirloom tomato, Cherokee purple. It's indeterminate, which means it's going to keep growing. So it's going to vine up and just keep going and going, and you'll have tomatoes all season long, as opposed to a determinate variety, which just goes to a certain size. That's it. You get tomatoes once, that's it. All right. So when you go to plant these things, you want to plant them to the height of the soil that's already in there. So you don't want to bury them, and you don't want to have this part sticking out of the other soil, because this will just act like a wick and all the water will come out of the soil. and just disappear with evaporation. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that it's at the same depth when we finish planting it. And this is light enough that I'm just going to do this. All right. So we want to have it to where it's not really showing the soil. And we don't use, when we're outside, we don't use regular potting soil because potting soil is meant to be used inside. So it's lightweight and it's airy. And so if you use that outside, it's going to blow all over the place. Now I'm going to go get some more soil. So we use soil made to go on outside. Now, if you wanted to dig up soil from your schoolyard that around here is pretty much clay, that's fine, except you really need to aerate it and add a lot of compost because it's really hard to grow stuff in pure clay. Especially if it's like carrots or something, you're going to get carrots that are like 2 millimeters wide just because it's so thick. Now with tomatoes, it's not so important that you stay at the same level as the pot. And if you have some really leggy tomatoes, like if you started some from seed and they weren't close enough to a light source and they're really long and stringy, you can actually bury them like halfway in the soil. Just cover up half of their stem, so that'll give them a better chance. All right, so I'm going to put its little tag here, and then I'm going to put the day I planted it, so I remember what it was. All right. Now, tomatoes, most things that aren't just leafy greens need full sun, which is 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight at least per day. So if you have like someplace on the east side of your house or the north side of your house and it barely even sees sun, and even then it's like half cloudy, then that's not a good place. You're not going to get very good growth. But if you plant them in the full sun, like right now, everything here is full sun. Now, when they put the greenhouse cover on this, it's gonna be bright enough, I think, because it's gonna be clear. But if you were gonna put like a shed over this, then you wouldn't want to have these tomatoes way back in here. They got to be able to see the sun really well. All right, this one is determinate. So this is only going to get to a certain size and stop. Now, when this thing gets built, I'm going to take some there it is. I'm going to take some baling twine and I'm going to attach it, and I'm going to let the I'm going to tie the tomato vine to this as it grows so it can go up, and then it won't get all dirty, and then you can eat like clean tomatoes and they're easier to pick and stuff. All right, so same thing. And when you go to take a plant out of a pot, put your fingers on either side and then just dump it out. If you just try to yank it out, you're going to break the roots off. If you can't get it to come out easily, squeeze the sides. If you have to, break the pot. Unless you have a really nice pot, in which case just destroy the plant. All right. So this is, I swear, I just can't keep anything. I'm losing my mind. Okay. Oh, here we go. I was like, I am so losing my mind. Okay, so this is a hybrid determinate tomato. This one, these are cherry tomatoes. Now, I like cherry tomatoes with schools because you can go in the garden, the kids can pick a tomato and just pop it in their mouth. If you only grow the big kind of tomatoes, then you have to like get a knife out and everybody has to share and blah, blah, blah. But if you get cherry tomatoes, everyone can have one. And that's just really fun. And they come in different colors, different flavors, different shapes. They have grape tomatoes. Sometimes that's just determined by their size, their shape. All right, so there's that. Now these you could save and reuse to plant new seeds if you wanted to. If you have a plant that ever gets like diseased or anything, then don't reuse it because you might spread the disease. Okay, so we're gonna give these guys a little bit of water. And when you water, just try to water close to the soil. Don't like water from here, because if you water from the top and get the leaves all wet, then if there's any fungal spores in the air, they can land on the wet leaves and cause a fungal problem. That's why when people have roses and their leaves of the roses have black spots, that's because they either watered from the top or it happened to rain and there's a bunch of fungal spores and poof, they got it. All right. So these are just 5-gallon buckets. As long as they have holes on the bottom, you can't really see, but I drilled some small holes all around the bottom. As long as they drain, that's the main thing, they got to drain. Now you can try the whole upside down tomato thing if you want, but it was hype. We never got anything better or worse out of it. It's just fun. So if you want to do that with kids just for fun, go for it. Okay, so these are half barrels. I think they're like 25 or 35-gallon barrels, and they've been cut in half. All right, and then they've been put in a little frame so they don't roll everywhere. And what we're going to plant in here are strawberries. All right, so again, we look at this, strawberries, full sun, container deep, ever bearing. There you go. It's not June bearing, May bearing, it's ever bearing, which means theoretically, it'll just keep giving you strawberries all season long. So again, dump it. Now these are going to spread everywhere. So you don't want to plant them like right close to each other. And they're probably going to trail over the edge. It's fine. You don't have to have one of those cutesy little strawberry planters made just for strawberries. You don't have to have all that fancy stuff. I mean, really, if you have something that holds soil, you got something to water with, and you make sure it's not too dry and not too wet, you're good. See what the kids want to do. See if the kids will bring in old shoes or cowboy boots or old bottles. Just kind of have fun with. As long as it holds soil, you're good. Does anyone have any questions? Because I can't see them if you do. This one I got because it just was in a different pot. It's sweet berry strawberry, but it's everbearing, so that's all that matters to me. Oh, that's when they took. That's what. No, that's okay. I don't know which one has it. One of these. All right. Basically, if you cut the center of this out, so it's got an opening like that big, and you plant, you can't just plant the seed. You got to plant like one of those. You need something at least like this big, and you make it so that the top, that would be that, is out here, and then you fill this up with soil. So then you got a tomato growing out the bottom of the bucket, so you can hang it up, and you don't have to worry about ground animals getting to your tomatoes. And theoretically, haha, that's cool and all, but we never got any worse or better with it. I mean, you don't get as many weeds, but that's about it. The things in containers tend to dry out faster than the things that are in the ground. So even if you put even if I had kept that container on and put it in here, it would not dry out as fast, because anytime you've got the edge of something exposed, then it's getting hotter and colder. There's just not as much insulation. So if you have stuff in the ground and a freeze comes, it's not going to be as risky as the stuff that's in pots where it can freeze real fast. Okay, so this is mint. What I like about mint is you can go in the garden and each kid can pick a leaf. You can use it to put it in tea or whatever. It'll grow like the dickens. So you always want to put mint in a container. It spreads through seeds, but it also spreads underground through rhizomes. So the roots will grow sideways, some of them, and cause another plant. All right. So you don't want them in the ground, because if they're in the ground, you're going to have mint for the entire generation, the next generation, the next generation. This is sweet mint. They have all kinds of mint. They have pineapple mint, chocolate mint. Trust me, they don't taste like chocolate or pineapple. They have cotton candy mint. They got all kinds of mint. And that you can harvest like right now. Okay, now, this is what I want to show you about if you're going to plant with seeds. All right. So you've seen like seed tapes, or maybe you haven't, but paper towels or newspapers, and they take flour paste or glue and go down as much as they're supposed to be spaced apart. Then they just kind of cover it with soil. So the thing about radishes and carrots, radishes, you can harvest in like 3 weeks. All right. So radishes can be planted 16 to a square foot. Well, guess what? A paper towel is about a square foot. So I just folded it and folded it and folded it until I had 16 little squares. And then I put a drop of Elmer's glue in the middle and put like 2 or 3 seeds. And I put 2 or 3 seeds so that if one doesn't grow, at least something will grow. If they both grow, then you just pick the one that's stronger and cut off the one that's weaker. You don't want to pluck it out because then you might disturb the roots of the one you want. So you just take scissors and cut it. All right, so here's my radishes, and I wrote radish because I wanted to make sure I remembered what was on here. And if you have kids, if you have little seeds like this and they drop them in the soil, you're never going to know where they went. So if you glue them on a paper towel, not only do you not waste seeds, but they're perfectly spaced the way they are right now. So now all you have to do is cover them with soil. Now, the general rule of thumb is you plant it twice as deep as the size of the seed. So a pumpkin seed, which is like that big, is going to be under a lot more soil than a radish. All right. So there's actually probably a little bit too much. And you want to make sure that seeds stay moist until they germinate, because if you have them, especially if you have them on top of the soil, and they dry out fast if they're on the top of the soil. So, but again, when you water them, I forgot to water everything else. When you water them, do it gently. All right. That's another good thing about this, is if some kid goes after it with the water too much, hopefully the seeds will pretty much stay in the area they were. So here's our radishes. The other cool thing is carrots are also 16 to a square foot. Now we're going to plant heirloom carrots, right? Carrots naturally come in a variety of colors. The reason we mostly see orange goes back to history, where they grew a lot of carrots in Holland and they were all different colors. So somebody plucked one up one day and it was orange. And there was some political guy, I can't remember if he was a duke or whatever, but he was the Duke of Orange. So guess what he liked after that? He liked orange carrots. So then they started growing more orange carrots, and then everybody forgot about all the other pretty colors. So yeah, you can have orange carrots if you want to be, if you're pro Holland, I guess. I don't know. But it's fun just to have different colors, because that freaks the kids out. They're like, what, a purple carrot, you know? So there's those planted. And that's what I remember what I did. And I'll water these guys too. All right. Now, I like herbs, and herbs are easy to grow because, I mean, you can start harvesting this stuff right now. This is basil. Now you wouldn't get as much of a robust plant if you started picking it at this stage, but you could. All right. Basil usually tends to explode, like even if you ignore it, like I usually do to my plants. All right. This is cinnamon basil, and I just thought that was cool, so I got some. Again. And if there's any big clumps in the soil, just kind of get them out of there. You can smell it already. It smells good. All right, here's some sage. I just make sure that they're kind of far enough apart that they have room. Now, sometimes if the roots are really going nuts around here, especially if they're really big, this isn't too root bound, but sometimes you get some that are just like solid roots. You can like kind of separate the roots out a little bit, just so it doesn't like grow in a circle and keep going in circles. It's not going to hurt it. I had sage and rosemary planted in my garden, and it made it through the winter. It made it through the negative 14 degrees for 10 days. You just can't kill it hardly. All right, so that's sage. Again, just water the soil, don't water the plants. Kids will water the plant, but you know, and that's just how it goes. And let the kids do the work. If they just watch the adults do the work, it's not their garden. They're not invested in it. If you let them pick out what they want to plant, and you let them pick out, you let them water it, you let them weed it, then they like that. And they'll even go like at recess, can we go take care of our plants? Yeah. And then they're so proud. In fact, they'll like, if they plant an eggplant, they'll eat the eggplant, even if they wouldn't normally eat an eggplant. If they grow it, they tend to eat it. Now, if you want to help keep the weeds down, you can spread out some straw. Now, there's a difference between straw and hay. Straw is like the stalk. See, here we go. This was wheat. Straw is the leftovers after they harvest. They missed this one. That's probably 0.01 cents worth. Anyway, they missed this one. So I don't even want to plant that because I might get wheat. But it's mostly stalk. So that you shouldn't get anything really growing out of straw except unless somebody like left you some bonus wheat kernels. Now, if you get hay is like prairie grass, alfalfa, anything like that. It's going to have seed heads. And guess what happens when you get the seed heads wet? You're going to grow hay. So make sure that we're using straw. And yeah.
Are you using gardening soil? You mentioned fine soil.
Yes, you can buy garden soil and the garden soil tends to be heavier. And so yeah, you just go to Lowe's or Walmart or any place like that, and that's what you buy. You can also use topsoil, but be careful because if they took topsoil off a place that had, where they changed oil for cars and stuff, you don't want to put that on your food. So just be careful where the topsoil comes from. Okay, so what mulch does is it helps hold moisture in, and it also prevents random seeds from weeds from like getting a hold of stuff. Don't want to put it too thick, especially on top of carrots and radishes. But all right, what it does is it helps hold the moisture in, so you don't have to water as often. Like if you think about it, if you are walking through an empty lot and you see a board on the ground and you pick up the board, what's it like under there? It's got animals. It's wet, right? So that's the thing for mulch. It keeps things moist, so you don't have to be out here like watering it 6 times a day, especially when it's like 1,000 degrees in the summer. Yes, we are building a greenhouse and a backyard garden here at the Botanic Garden, and the people who are supposed to put the covers on have not shown up yet. Now, when they do, these are only going to get sun from the east, so it's not going to be, and they're going to get a little bit of south, but there's trees right over there. But these are leafy greens, so they're not going to need as much. Like if they just got 2 to 4 hours of sunlight a day, they'd be fine. It's when you have something that's a fruit, vegetable, but anything with seeds is a fruit. And so anything that's going to be doing that, making flowers, making fruits, making strawberries, making whatever. If it's not just plain green, then it needs a lot more sun. So this stuff is fine. And you can use anything for mulch, really. I mean, you can use newspapers, you can use wood chips, you can use straw, you can use you can use pine needles, but pine needles are acidic. So if you're growing blueberries or something that likes a low pH, feel free. But if it's something that likes a higher pH, you might have trouble with it because when the rainwater hits it, it makes the soil more acidic. All right. I didn't water the strawberries, so I'm not going to mulch them yet. Okay, over here. This is a basic salad mix from the US and Italy. Kale, cabbage, kohlrabi, broccoli, and arugula. All right. So lettuce seeds, like again, if it's twice as deep as the seed is, they're not going to be very deep. All right. So what I do with this is basically just kind of sprinkle them, because this is leaf lettuce. So you can get leaf lettuce really close together. All right. And then I just kind of like, But all you can do. All right. And as you harvest the leaf lettuce, you can put some more seeds in there. It'll just keep going all season long. So that was easy. So mainly with the school gardens, it's use what you have. You don't have to have anything special. I mean, 5-gallon buckets, barrels. You don't want it to look like a Better Homes in the garden, because if it does, then I look at it and go, the kids have nothing to do with that. If it looks like 5-gallon buckets and everything's planted weird, that's a school garden. That's where the kids are learning how to do it. The kids are doing it, and the kids are proud of it. If you have the master gardeners come and decide what to plant it, water it, weed it, that's not a school garden. That's a demonstration garden, and the kids are like, yeah, all right. So get the kids involved. Grow stuff they like to eat. Grow some weird stuff that they haven't seen, like chocolate tomatoes. Some purple carrots. Grow some stuff like mint that's fun to use, that you can go out and get. Some lettuce and basil, you can run out there and get some. And then, if you grow cherry tomatoes, each kid can have one. So do something that everyone can have a bite. And go for the stuff that's like ever bearing. What time is it? Anybody got questions? Have I talked 2 hours? Wow, are you serious? That's like some kind of like marathon record, because normally I go for like 2 or 3 hours, and someone's like, okay, everybody else will present next time because all our time used up. All right, so I can take you on a tour of the garden. Okay, so
Julie,
these are the backyard. What?
can you hear me?
Yeah.
One of the questions on here, somebody asked about the gardening soil because you mentioned not using potting soil outside. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, potting soil isn't even soil. Potting soil is a mix of, the little white specks. That's perlite. And sometimes it's actually little styrofoam pellets, and that helps aerate it. And it also helps hold a little bit of the moisture and the nutrients. Then you've got the gold fleck stuff, which is vermiculite, which is like volcanic rock and holds on to the water a little bit. But the rest of it isn't even soil. It is compost and mainly chopped up bark and stuff. So there's actually no soil in it. And the reason for that is, one, you're going to be doing it inside, and you don't want to bring in all kinds of bugs and stuff. It's sterilized so that there's no fungus or bacterial or viral infection that's going to start with your plants. It weighs a lot less so that you can pick it up and move it around easier. What else? But if you use, if you're inside using your house plants and you notice that when you water, the water goes in, but the top doesn't look wet. It just looks like it's repelling the water. That means it's time to change the soil, because that coating that helps the potting soil retain water doesn't last forever. So when it wears off, basically the water just goes straight through because it can't absorb into anything. Now, garden soil has actual topsoil. I don't think it's been sterilized, but don't quote me on that. It's got a lot more compost, topsoil. There are also some shredded bark and stuff, but it's heavier, because if you put potting soil here, then the first time there was a wind, it'd be like whoosh, it's all gone. All right, so it's heavier, and it's got a lot more compost and nutrients. So even with potting soil, it's not so much compost, because again, it gets sterilized. So, but yeah, that's the main difference, is it's heavier and it's got different ingredients. It actually has soil.
Thanks. Hopefully that answered her question.
Well, if not, they got my email, and I'll answer it, or get someone else to answer it to where they're happy with it.
Shelley, this is Dina. Can you hear me? I don't think she can.
Yeah.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the question.
Oh, okay. Not so much a question, but a comment, and I did put it in the chat. When we were planning this a year ago, I was able to get some 5-gallon buckets.
Okay, start over. I was getting 2 questions at once.
I'm sorry. When we were planning this series of webinars a year ago, I was able to get 5-gallon buckets at Panera. They had about 10 stacked up outside, and they just had a free sign on them. So
Well, the
schools,
good thing about any food service is they have a lot of buckets, like they get, maraschino cherries in and syrups and pickles and whatever else. And so they have a lot of buckets. Now, the good thing about that is those are safe buckets to use. You don't want to use an old paint bucket, an old tar bucket. You want something that has some kind of food in it or something that hasn't had anything in it. So if you like go to Lowe's or Walmart and you just buy a new bucket, that's fine. If you buy something that had if you go to, any restaurant and they give you like their old buckets of pickles or whatever, like Pickleman's might have some pickle ones. Those are fine because they've had food in it. So that's safe. That's food grade.
and schools
So
may
yeah,
have
you
a
can
lot.
usually find free buckets.
There's
Number
a question.
10.
Number 10.
Oh, the large tin cans? Yeah, tin cans are fine. They might rust, but that's not going to hurt anything. Yeah, it's fine. You might have to, the thing is, it's not going to last forever. Of course, plastic won't either. Plastic will get brittle and break, so nothing's forever. But yeah, if you had tin cans, just make sure you drill holes in the bottom, and you could like line those up on a shelf or something. The other good thing about gardening, not in the ground, is one, you don't have to dig it up and slop around in it when it's wet and it's heavy and it's clay. You don't have to do that. You can have these things along the edge of a playground so it doesn't take up any extra room. If you have it in an elevated thing like this, the rabbits don't usually get into it. Now, that's not going to stop the squirrels and stuff. But yeah, the container gardens, you can even put those on asphalt. So if you just had like, I've seen people take water troughs. Yeah, like come over here. So here is a water trough that they've drilled holes in. This is a feeder that they've drilled holes in. So if you got someone who's got like a leaky water trough, yay, perfect. So, and this is either tin or aluminum. So yeah, anything that holds soil basically. And yeah, it doesn't have to look pretty. If it looks pretty and it's a school garden, I'm suspicious. All right, I want it to look like a school garden. So yeah. Yeah, tin cans. I've seen people use guttering. They zip tie guttering to the chain link fence at the playground and they just grow herbs. Just drill holes in it.
One time you mentioned like old aquariums like fish tanks.
If you have all fish tanks, you can do aquaponics and hydroponics, but I wouldn't put that outside. Unless you fill it with soil and drill a hole in the bottom, then sure, anything that holds soil. Like literally anything. So like I've seen vacuum cleaners used as pots. I'm not even kidding. Okay. Seriously. Like the middle part where the bag would go, they had it open and they had filled it. They were just showing that if it holds soil, it can work. If it drains and it holds soil. So yeah. And so all these came from down in Ardmore. There's a place called the Noble Foundation, and they're basically like a private extension service, I guess you could say. They do recommendations and consulting for people for free as far as they can drive, like 6 to 8 hours away from themselves, they'll do it. And anyway, they had backyard gardens like school garden, so all the cheap stuff. This is like a medium garden, so it's kind of like, yeah, we put some effort into it. And then over here is going to be like the Martha Stewart garden. So they're going to have all the cool, expensive high-end things. So they had these for demonstrations, and they have different kinds of irrigation. Like some had hoses, some had drip irrigation. All right. And I don't recommend using drip irrigation with kids just because if they're not doing it, they're going to go, oh, wait, somebody had to water this? I don't remember watering this. Who watered this? So the kids can do it. The kids can weed, the kids can water. If you want every kid to have their own space, if you give every kid a 5-gallon bucket, that's about a square foot. So they could grow 16 carrots, or they could grow 1 tomato, or they could grow radishes, they could grow flowers, whatever they want to grow. If every kid had a 5-gallon bucket that they're responsible for, they can pretty much just take care of that. And they can water. If you got a kid who likes to water, get papyrus or something. Then they can't overwater it. All right. So yeah. Or if you have like a raised bed, you can section it off and assign square feet. Now, if you're going to build a new garden and it's a raised bed or even an in-ground bed, don't go for further across than 4 feet, because you can reach in about 2 feet from both directions. You get much further, the kids are going to have to climb in there. Then you're compacting the soil. No air's going to get to the roots. It's not going to be a good thing. So, you know, keep it nice and fluffed up, so to speak. Just have it to where they can reach in and don't go in. And you can have it as long as you want. Just don't make it. And then if you have 2 gardens close to each other, think about this before you fill it with soil. If you have 2 like 4x4 gardens and you're like, oh, this looks nice, we'll put them like this far apart and then people can walk between them. Okay, when the kids are on their knees, okay, you got kids this way, you got kids the other way, and you got a teacher that needs to walk between them. So put it at least like 6 or 8 feet apart from each other. Plus, if you make it too skinny for the lawnmower, the landscape people are going to hate you, and then you won't have a garden for long. They get mowed over all the time. If you mess with the landscape person, they're not happy. So ask for them too. Ask for their help. Say, hey, how can we do this to where it doesn't add much, if any, work to your schedule? You know, that is easy to work around. You also want to make sure you place it next to a water source, because if you build this nice garden and then it's like, the nearest water source is like 100 feet away, I guess we got to buy a lot of hoses. So think sun, water, you know, what kind of soil, and then make sure it's not in the middle of the playground where it's going to get trampled. It's not so close together that the lawnmower guy gets mad, you know, close enough that the teachers can take the kids out real quick and do a little lesson. Because if it's like half a mile back, 1, it's going to be impossible to take care of. 2, no one's going to see it, out of sight, out of mind. And 3, we don't have time to hike half a mile to go to a garden. So keep it convenient, but also located with the right things around it. Oh, you want to talk about composting? Okay, so here we go, composting. All right, the good thing about school cafeteria, you got a lot of compost. You got potato peels and you got apple cores, and you got, as long as it's not meat, bones, or dairy or fat, you're good to go. So basically, if it's a plant origin, if you put the meat and the bones and stuff, you're going to attract animals, and that's going to be nasty. So this is like, if you want to build this, feel free, but this is what I'm just going to use as an example. All right. So this actually has a little roof that raises up, and it only comes down when it's like going to rain or something. But you throw in, you know, apple peels, coffee grounds, newspapers, stuff like that. You'll know if you get the ratio wrong, because if it's disgustingly wet and soupy, it needs more like brown stuff like dead leaves, newspapers. If it's not breaking down at all, it needs more water, because you're basically feeding microbes that do the breaking down for you. So they need a little bit of moisture, a little bit of heat, and some air. So once in a while, you got to fluff this stuff up. But if you have 3 next to each other, you can take all the stuff in here and throw it over to this one. And then that way you've fluffed it all up. Everything has been exposed to air, water it a little bit once in a while. All right. Then after a while, you put it to the 3rd one. And theoretically, after it's been in there for a while, it'll look like dark, the same color, won't stink. If it doesn't stink, then it's ready. And you can put that out around your garden. But most schools don't have this. I'll show you what they have. Okay, so this is what I see in school gardens most of the time. All right, so this opens up. It's got 2 sides, so you can fill up one side. You can, and then after that one's filled up, you can fill up the other one, and then this one will be done fast sooner. And you just spin it around to like aerate it, and you can add some water to it. And so you just keep adding stuff, and eventually a nice, perfect compost will fall out. The problem is, besides wasps, the other problem is it doesn't really get hot enough. You want a compost pile so it can get hot enough and the microbes get really active. Every time I go to a school garden, well, 99.9% of the time, I do this and I see sticks and grass. So nothing that has any moisture. All right. And nobody turns it, not that it would really matter at that point. but you got to have green stuff and brown stuff. So living stuff and stuff that's been around a while, like newspaper, dead leaf, stuff that really doesn't have any moisture. And the green stuff is like freshly dead or living, you know, so it's green, like fresh green grass and apple core, stuff like that. So you want to get the ratio just right. And there's different, you know, 3-to-1, 5-to-1, whatever. But just play around with it and you'll figure it out. You don't want it to be too wet and smelly. You don't want it to be dry and nothing's going on. But generally, these aren't worth your money. This is another one. Same deal. You open it up. All right, you open it up. There's slits in the side so it gets air, but of course the middle stuff's not getting air. Now, if you really want to use it, you could take a PVC pipe, drill holes in it, stick it down the middle so it can kind of get air in the middle. All right. And then it even says on here, no meat, fat, or bones to remind you to not attract animals. And then theoretically, after it's been sitting there, you open this and perfect compost comes pouring out. Yeah, right. Okay, so what I would do instead is do what Mother Nature does. Just pile up. I mean, you can make it look nice by building like using pallets, wooden pallets, like 3 sides, and you just like start throwing in the apple cores, and then once in a while some sawdust or some newspapers or whatever. Throw down some like lettuce that was wilted, whatever is left over that was kind of moist. If it gets too moist, like I said, add dry stuff, and then you can just have like another set of pallets and another set of pallets and just go through it. You know, when this needs to be turned because it's full, turn it over to the next one. When you got to add more to that, then move this one over there. That's your finished compost, and it should be really broken down. There shouldn't be any big chunks, but if you have chunks, not all of it's ready, you can get hardware cloth and make like a sifter, and the kids will sit there and sift out the stuff that's fine enough to use. And they love doing this. Adults don't have to do this. Kids love doing this. And then they'll sift it into a wheelbarrow. And then they got this compost they can go put anywhere in the garden. You know, they can put it alongside plants. They can put it when they plant stuff, they can put it in. You know, it's just like a nice little adds fluffiness to the soil, let's say. But especially if you have clay soil and you ever wanted to have an in-ground garden, we're gonna need to do that forever and keep mixing in the clay, keep mixing in the compost and stuff, and eventually you'll have something you can plant in the ground. Do not add sand to try to break up the clay, because sand and clay makes concrete. Okay, so no, just add compost and stuff and just keep turning it in, and eventually it'll take years, but eventually it'll get there. And with the straw bale garden, if you want to actually grow stuff in the straw bales, that's fine. You have to condition them first. It takes like a week or two. You have to add nitrogen. You have to like turn it. You got to soak it with water and stuff before you can even use them. And then you dig a little hole in the top, you put some soil, and you plant. Thing is, there's no insulation really there, all right? And the drainage is really fast. So I wouldn't even attempt it in the Oklahoma summer. I did at home. Let's not talk about that one. Anyway, so when that breaks down and it's all used up, you can throw it in the compost pile, all right? Not all at once, because then you'd overwhelm it. Just a layer of that, a layer of apples and whatever, a layer of that. So yeah, and now on that one that's tires that's really deep, I would put straw bales in the bottom of that. If you have something that's really deep and you're thinking that's a lot of soil to buy, don't buy soil for it. You just don't buy that much. You only need like that much soil. So what you can do for something that's really deep is you can take plastic bottles, like your water bottles, leave the caps on and throw them all in the bottom. And then that brings the level up, so you don't have to add as much soil and it'll still be where you want it. So it doesn't have to be solid soil all the way to the ground. This is so weird not seeing anybody. I made a mess. No more questions? What time is it?
10 till.
This is like the shortest I've ever done. Surely somebody has questions. I keep talking forever once I go, oh yeah, oh yeah. You can also put weeds in your compost, but if the weeds have already gone to seed, don't put them in your compost, because then you're just like making happy weed babies that are gonna, when you spread it, it's just like, hey, yeah, look, you spread it for us, yay. So unless your compost pile gets really, really hot to kill the weed seeds, don't put it in, and don't put any poop in there, like no dog poop, because that's just gross. And you know, ugh. Did I just say that? No poop. Well, Sherry, can you put my email address, and if they have any questions,
Yeah, I
and
think,
if enough of them
Yeah.
have questions, we can do like a specific training for whatever they want to know about. This is like the rough basics.
I don't know.
Talk, they can hear you. I just kind of wrapped it up.
what is a purple carrot?
It's purple,
Somebody asked,
but
what
if you cut into it, it's orange in the middle. Somebody asked what?
a purple carrot is.
You could also throw some parsnips in there just to really mess it up. No, purple carrots. You can go to like Sprouts or Walmart if you're lucky, and you can get a bunch of carrots. It's like they're just colored different. They taste the same. They cook the same. Everything's the same. And you know, you slice it up. Don't even let the kids know what it is. Of course, when you slice it, and they see the orange in the middle, that kind of gives it away. But now they got yellow ones, and purple ones, you know, all kinds. So you just, you know, you can serve them just plain carrots, but all different colors, and they're like, woohoo, look at this variety. It's like, not really, but yeah, it looks like that. And if you're for doing something like, if you're trying to have like a culinary contest or something, and you want to have it look cool, then you can use all the different colors, and you know, don't limit yourself to orange. It all tastes the same though.
Somebody asked, how often should you water a container?
How often should you water a container garden? Well, you water it when it gets dry. Like if you don't just go off the surface, stick your finger in there. And if it's like wet within this zone, you're probably okay. But if it starts, you have to go down further to find the wet, then that's too low. So you water, and whatever you water, anything that's a pot or a container, water it until water comes out the bottom. Wait a few minutes, and then water it again until water comes out the bottom. Because if you just water it and don't let it flow out, then any fertilizer you use just builds up over time, and that's when you see the white crusty soil, and that's when you see the tips of your plants turn brown. You don't want that buildup of fertilizer and salts. You want it to just rinse out. So you're basically rinsing it and giving it a chance to really soak in all that stuff. And you're gonna have to do this more, like if it's on a hot sidewalk on the south side of a house, getting like boiling inside, you're gonna have to water several times. If you have it on top of grass away from a brick wall, it won't be as much. So the more sun and the more heat it gets, the more you're gonna have to water it. So you just have to kind of play it by ear. And if it rains, hallelujah, you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, you want to make sure it's wet. You really can't almost get it too wet in Oklahoma if it's in a pot and it's hot, but just make sure it's not under wet. No other questions?
That's it.
Coming to you from the Botanic Gardens in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And this is open. Anytime the sun's out, the Botanic Garden is open. So 366 days a year, dawn to dusk, we're open. So if you want to come check this stuff out, and I'm just going to keep this like school garden. I'm not going to try to make some Martha Stewart thing, because trying to make it to where a school could emulate this. So cheap, you know.
Ask if the sale is
The sale is still going on. In fact, it's going on right now, and then there'll probably be leftovers, so it'll probably be going on next week too. But obviously, a better selection sooner you get here. But yeah, it's going on. And there's always usually something for sale anyway. When you first come in, there's like tables where people have like succulents and stuff, and there's usually something for sale year round. And then when it comes to Halloween, they have the mums and the pumpkins. So it's a seasonal thing, but pretty much year round, there's something you can buy.
everybody should buy.
Tell everybody I said bye, says Cassie.
Thanks. I'm gonna sign us off.
Okay.